Exposed. The amazing secret that helped me survive. A nurse's touching advice I never expected. Sarah Thompson had never thought much of the wisdom offered by her patients, until one fateful night. Exhausted after a grueling 12-hour shift, she was trying to shake off another day in the chaotic world of healthcare. As she prepared to leave, an elderly patient, Mrs. Jenkins, her eyes deep-set and glistening, grabbed Sarah's hand. Never let the storms of life drown out the dreams of your heart. Those words sunk into her like stones, stirring memories of her grandmother, who had always believed in resilience and nurturing the community. But now, within the comforting walls of the hospital, the weight of her reality pressed down on her. Bills piled high on the kitchen counter as she scrambled to provide for her 2 kids. Utility notices were barely holding on to their sanity, like her sense of hope. On the drive home, Sarah felt the familiar pang of uncertainty twist in her stomach. Taking her children to the local park was a luxury she'd long been deprived of, as her paycheck barely stretched to cover rent. A dull ache of panic settled in. How would she tell the kids there would be no new shoes for school? It didn't help that she was haunted by her brother Jeff's voice, eager to remind her of her failures. What was she doing with her life? "This isn't a dream worth chasing," he would say. "Cash in, Sarah. Sell that land." But today, fate would interrupt her internal chaos. As the sun poured through the kitchen window the next morning, she received a call that changed everything. Her grandmother had left her a parcel of land outside of town. Her heart raced with excitement and dread. Visions of a community garden, the very essence of everything her grandmother believed, flickered in her mind. It would become a haven for families like hers, struggling under the weight of obligation and bills. But then doubt crept in. Sell the land for a few months' rent? Or nurture lush plots that would take time, money, and energy to develop? Each option tore at her, fueling darker thoughts. In the safety of her small kitchen, shadows of her children's laughter danced around her, reminding her what was at stake. Would they understand her enough to see that sometimes dreams come at a cost? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the following days, Sarah faced growing scrutiny. Her peers at the hospital whispered disapproval behind her back. She was foolish to think she could transform a vacant plot into a sanctuary. The frustration bubbled, fueling her internal battle. The anxiety coiled tighter, questions gnawing at her. Could she really ask her children to believe in this vision? And as night fell, her children's innocent queries cut deeper. "Mom, what will we do with the land?" Their wide eyes looked at her as sorrow and determination warred within her. She had to make a choice that would either bind her family to despair or lift them into a realm of hope. But in that intoxicating moment, a new layer of uncertainty unfurled. Could she summon the courage to fully embrace the dream that throbbed within her? The shadows loomed larger than ever as she lay awake, knowing that the heart of her struggle was about to reach its breaking point. The following days crept by in a blur. Each morning, Sarah donned her scrubs, walking into the hospital with a smile. But inside, turmoil was brewing. Each patient she interacted with cast a fleeting glimpse of hope and despair alike. They filled her heart, yet the echoes of doubt resounded louder. Could she really turn her grandmother's land into something beautiful against the backdrop of her suffocating reality? One afternoon, as she prepared medications in the bustling nurses' station, Sarah overheard snippets of conversation that ignited another flame of anxiety. "Did you hear about the Thompson woman?" One nurse snickered. "Thinking she can make a garden out of that wasteland? How naive." The others laughed while she felt heat rise to her cheeks. It was hard to ignore the whispers that questioned every ounce of ambition she'd begun to dig up. As she returned home that evening, her resolve felt frayed. Could she nurture this dream when every practical instinct screamed to take the cash? The fridge held little beyond condiments, and her children needed more than just dreams. And what if her brother was right? What if this was another misguided venture veiled in optimism? Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, it all weighed heavier than the pillows that pressed down on her. Yet, in the dark, when doubt and despair mingled, something caught the edge of her consciousness. The warmth of Mrs. Jenkins's words lingered, a lifeline against the rising tide of despair. They reminded her so vividly of her grandmother's hands, calloused yet nurturing, always digging in the earth. How many seeds had been planted with love and patience? A thought emerged from the haze. Perhaps this land wasn't just an obligation. It was an opportunity to reclaim not just her dreams, but perhaps her most authentic self, the part that believed in abundance over scarcity. What if she started small? Maybe she didn't need the whole vision fully realized immediately. Instead, she could merely begin. At that moment, a little spark of determination flared up. The midnight oil could burn, yes, if she set an achievable goal. The next day she would take a walk to the land, visualize its potential, and find the courage to reach out to local resources that could help. Community grants for gardening or nonprofit organizations that believed in personal growth through communal efforts. The following morning she awoke with newfound vigor. Dawn painted her kitchen with soft light, casting away shadows and doubts. Over cups of cereal, while her children laughed and bickered over whose turn it was to choose the music, a plan began to form in her mind, a strategy to explore the first steps toward building something remarkable. As she drove to work, instead of replaying her brother's warnings, her thoughts danced around possibilities. Each interaction with her patients would now fuel her, filling her with inspiration rather than degradation. Today, she would ask questions at the nursing station about grants, about resources outside the bounds of her tight-knit world. But as her shift ended, fatigue set in, and looming clouds of doubt poured back in. When she returned to her parked car, her heart sank slightly. It looked like the sky mirrored her fears with darkening clouds threatening rain. Would it be easy to slip back into complacency? Or would she dare to defy the storm brewing within her with the storm outside? As she drove toward home, a balancing act between resilience and insecurity, a phone call interrupted her thoughts. It was a contact from the Community Development Office, curious about the inquiry she had made nearly a week ago. They were interested in discussing funding options for her potential garden. Surprise and apprehension danced in her chest. Could this be her moment to step forward? The tension between hope and skepticism swelled within her, as she considered that perhaps today might change everything. Or nothing at all. The decision before her remained daunting. She sat in front of her home for what felt like hours, heart pounding. And suddenly she realized as rain began to fall, a choice was now calling her. The moment was approaching. She could either embrace this chance or shrink back into her fears. Would she dare to say yes, potentially exposing herself to the world's skepticism? Or would she retreat yet again? As the rain began to drum steadily on the roof of her car, the choice loomed larger than life, waiting to tip the balance and ignite a journey that would change everything. The rain fell in rhythmic patterns, a gentle reminder of the chaos brewing inside her. Sarah clenched the steering wheel, wrestling with indecision. The contact from the Community Development Office felt like a lifeline, yet dread curled around her heart. What if she moved forward and failed? The laughter of her colleagues echoed in her mind, a cacophony of derision and doubt. Did she truly have what it took to turn dust into bloom? With a deep breath, she finally turned off the engine and stepped into the downpour. Each drop was a kiss of urgency, urging her to act. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed the number. The line rang, and for a moment, anxiety clutched her throat, stifling the words she had rehearsed. "Hello?" The voice was bright, warm, inviting, nothing like the cold whispers she had faced before. "Hi, this is Sarah Thompson. I was calling about the garden project funding." Her voice wavered, revealing her uncertainty. "Oh, yes. I'm glad you reached out. We're excited about someone so passionate about revitalizing the local community." The words were music to her ears, harmonizing with her growing determination. As the conversation flowed, she shared her vision. An urban garden on her grandmother's land. A sanctuary for all, reflecting resilience and nurturing. With every detail she spoke, Sarah could feel pieces of her identity clicking back into place. She was not just an exhausted nurse with a dream. She was a catalyst for change, a builder of beauty from the wreckage of disappointment. By the end of the call, enthusiasm sparked inside her, igniting ideas for the garden that she had never fully imagined. They would provide materials, mentorship, and even a small fund to kickstart the project. Hope became a tangible force that day, strong enough to dispel the doubt that lay dormant within. But this newfound hope was not without a shadow. As she hung up, she realized there was a cost. She would need to invest her time and energy into something vastly different from the routine she clung to at the hospital. The choice beckoned like a flame, drawing her closer, even as it flickered with uncertainty. At work the next day, Sarah faced her colleagues with renewed resolve. Their dismissals were no longer echoes in her mind, but part of the noise she could overlook. Instead, she leaned on the belief that true growth requires pushing beyond one's comfort zone. "Can I borrow the projector this afternoon?" she asked at the nurse's station, catching the attention of her coworkers. "I'm putting together a presentation about what I learned on gardening resources." The laughter that had once pierced her heart now felt distant. They exchanged bemused glances, but no longer cared to let their judgments devour her courage. They were simply observing a transformation. Little did they know that she was no longer seeking their validation. As the afternoon wore on, and she stood before the gathered nurses, Sarah felt her voice stabilize with every word spoken. She outlined her plans with clarity. Adrenaline coursed through her, pushing through the nerves. This was about more than just a garden. It was about reclaiming her family's legacy and her own identity. The questions that ricocheted back were insightful, sparking new ideas that acted as small building blocks for her venture. They posed challenges that she had not considered, but she welcomed their queries like stepping stones leading her toward growth. For the first time, the notion of advancing through uncertainty surged inside her, turning fear into fuel. As she wrapped up the presentation, a flicker of pride ignited. She had shed a dream once veiled in doubt, and in doing so, reclaimed a piece of herself along the way. Yet as she walked out of the meeting, joy met with a stark realization. This was merely the beginning. Stepping outside, where vibrant colors glistened under sunlit rain, she pulled out the notes related to her next meeting with the community office. What awaited her next could very well be the breakthrough she needed, or perhaps a moment of profound defeat. Would she rise to the occasion? Or would her fear once again loom larger than her ambition? The stakes had never felt higher as she prepared for a reality where others may yet again disapprove. The question lingered. Could she remain steadfast amidst the potential fallout? With determination surging through her veins, Sarah realized she was hurtling towards a defining moment, one that could either solidify her path or unravel the very fabric she'd begun to weave. And this time, the roots she planted needed to rise beneath the weight of that truth. In the days following her presentation, Sarah couldn't shake the anticipation she felt about the upcoming meeting with the community office. The excitement that once surged within her was now tinged with an unsettling mix of anxiety and hope. What if she was not ready? What if they saw through her facade of confidence and dismissed her plans altogether? Each evening was spent poring over notes, sketching garden layouts, and assembling the resources she had gathered. The garden had transformed into more than just a project. It had become her lifeline. As the time drew closer, she couldn't help but visualize the garden in her mind. Rows of vibrant vegetables, colorful flowers, a space filled with laughter and activity. Each image solidified her commitment, yet the shadows of self-doubt loomed like storm clouds. In moments of quietude, she found herself grappling with the competing feelings of inadequacy and determination. Was she truly equipped to take this leap? The day of the meeting arrived with a heaviness in the air, as if it sensed the weight of her aspirations. Sarah stepped into the community office, her heart pounding in rhythm with the distant sounds of the city outside. She straightened her spine, attempting to channel the resolve she had cultivated through countless nights spent envisioning this day. The office was filled with sunlight, warm and inviting, but as she took a seat at the long table, she felt an icy grip around her heart. "Thank you for coming in today," the lead advisor greeted, smiling encouragingly. "We've reviewed your proposal and are excited to discuss it further." As they flipped through her documents, she seized the opportunity to speak passionately about every detail. Each word flowed from her with authenticity, a stark contrast to the fragile woman who had once stammered under scrutiny. She spoke of community engagement, the importance of teaching sustainable practices, and the joy that gardening could bring to the neighborhood. The hesitation that had taunted her began to fade as their nods signaled understanding and interest. But just as she was feeling a swell of encouragement, a question pierced her bubble of positivity. "And what do you think about the challenges that might arise?" The query hung in the air, demanding an answer she wasn't prepared for. Visions of hurdles danced in her mind. Running out of funds, community resistance, potential failure. Panic surged, threatening to undo the progress she'd made. Yet amidst the fray of her thoughts, a deeper truth crystallized. Failure could be a stepping stone, not an endpoint. "Challenges are inevitable," Sarah began, choosing her words carefully. "But I've learned through this process that each obstacle provides an opportunity for growth." She could feel the gravity of her message starting to resonate, even with her own internal struggles echoing in the background. Their expressions shifted. She was no longer just presenting a project, but revealing her evolution. This was her journey, one of resilience and tenacity, a reflection of the myriad struggles she faced not only in her professional life, but in her personal identity as well. As the meeting reached its conclusion, she felt an unfamiliar weight lift from her shoulders. They were excited about her proposal. The promise of partnership and support was within reach. Yet, the reality of what lay ahead gripped her with a fresh sense of urgency. She would need to face naysayers who might not understand her vision, including voices from her own past that would try to undermine her. With enthusiasm bubbling inside her, Sarah left the office, accompanied by a sense of real possibility and an equally daunting wave of anxiety. She was prepared, ready to carve her own space into the world she longed to create. But questions lingered. Would she have the strength to push through the inevitable challenges? And how would she balance this budding dream with her responsibilities at the hospital? As she crossed the street, the sun broke through the clouds. There it was, her moment. A small yet significant step toward a future brimming with potential. But that determination felt freshly forged. Fragile yet vibrant like new sprouts breaking through soil. Would those sprouts stand firm against the tempestuous winds ahead? Or would they succumb to the doubt that had haunted her for so long? Each step forward led her deeper into uncharted territory, a place where her personal growth would recount tales of struggle and triumph. There was no turning back now. This was about confronting her fears and redefining her narrative. The real journey was just beginning, and in the hours ahead, the pivotal choices she would make could either build her dreams or unravel them entirely. Would she rise, fortified by her new experience, or would she falter at the precipice of possibility? The days following her meeting unfolded slowly, each filled with a strange mix of cautious optimism and underlying trepidation. Sarah returned to her routine at the hospital, but her mind drifted to the garden project that now felt more tangible than ever before. Each time she stepped into the hospital, the sterile halls felt both familiar and stifling, an environment that no longer held the same relevance for her ambitions. Nurturing that vision of the community garden became an anchor, yet with it came the weight of responsibility. As she cared for her patients, a persistent thought buzzed at the periphery of her consciousness. How would she begin transforming the plans into reality? The once clear vision transformed into a labyrinth of logistical challenges, financial concerns, and the looming presence of doubt. The garden was no longer a distant fantasy. It was a commitment, and the urgency to act loomed large. One evening, as she sorted through her notes, a few words from the meeting echoed back to her. Challenges are inevitable. They had become a mantra, one that fluttered through her mind like notes from a forgotten song. With each echo came a rekindled determination and a hint of a plan. She grabbed a notepad and began to chart out the smallest steps: local suppliers, potential collaborators, and community outreach strategies. There was power in those initial actions, and within minutes, the weight of her anxiety shifted to excitement. But that excitement was tempered by another unsettling truth. Sarah knew she had to confront the skepticism she feared might arise from her colleagues. They would question her commitment, and some might view her ambition as a distraction from her duties as a nurse. The internal conflict churned within her. How much of her passion could she reveal without sacrificing her professional identity? What if sharing her vision led to backlash? The following day, during a rare break in the nurses' lounge, Sarah hesitated before bringing up her plans with her colleagues. They were gathered, relaxed and engaged, sharing laughter and stories. As she approached them, her chest tightened. Would they support her venture, or would they dismiss it as a childish fantasy? Taking a deep breath, she boldly spoke up. I've been working on a community gardening project. It's a way to bring fresh produce to our neighborhoods and promote a healthier lifestyle. Silence enveloped the room, their laughter fading as they shifted their gaze toward her. An internal battle waged. She searched their faces for any hint of encouragement. Finally, one of the senior nurses, Linda, chimed in, surprising Sarah. That sounds like an incredible idea. We need more initiatives like that. But are you sure you have the time? Your shifts are already demanding. The question hit Sarah harder than she anticipated, reverberating through her thoughts. Was she ready to stretch herself thin in pursuit of this dream? The possibility of failure loomed heavily in her mind. I believed taking this on could change lives, including my own, she replied, her voice firm. In that exchange she felt a shift. Her conviction had empowered her to articulate her beliefs unapologetically. Yet the apprehension was far from quelled. Linda's supportive words were a soothing balm, yet they also left a lingering question. What if her passion overshadowed her responsibilities? Was it selfish to pursue a personal dream amid her obligation towards her patients and their families? Days turned into weeks, and as Sarah navigated her nursing responsibilities, she gradually began to seek resources to ground her project. Conversations at work became less about whether she should pursue her vision, but more about how she could realistically implement it without losing sight of her nursing career. Each interaction wove a thread into her growing tapestry of community involvement. But just as Sarah began feeling more secure in her journey, Whispers of doubt crept into her thoughts again. A familiar refrain, the kind of skepticism that had once paralyzed her. She received an email from a colleague questioning the viability of her project, warning her that time spent on hobbies could affect her performance at work. The suggestion stung, engulfing her in turmoil. Was she foolish to dream of creating something bigger than herself? Her heart raced as she contemplated responding. Did she defend her ambition? Or did she retreat into the safety of silence, relinquishing her aspirations to the grips of self-doubt? The time had come for a decision, one that would define her course forward. Would she accept the constraints of conventional expectation? Or would she challenge them, pushing through the murky waters of uncertainty to reach the garden of her dreams? The weight of this choice pressed heavily, demanding clarity amidst her swirling feelings. The pressure swirled within Sarah, bubbling just beneath her calm exterior. Feeling cornered by doubts, she knew avoiding the email wouldn't diminish the shadows lurking in her mind. The consequences of silence felt weightier than the potential friction that could arise from standing her ground. She stared at the screen, hesitating, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Her inner voice surged, nagging at her determination. What if she crafted her response carefully, acknowledging her colleagues' concerns while outlining her vision? The project wasn't merely a hobby. It was a dream solidified by the desire to uplift the community and foster healthier lifestyles. With renewed resolve, she typed, "I appreciate your concern. However, I genuinely believe this project can create positive change. I've managed my time well so far, and I'm committed to ensuring my responsibilities at the hospital don't suffer." When she hit send, it was as if a part of her had been liberated from shackles. Despite knowing the risks of opening herself up to criticism, the act of self-advocacy kindled a flicker of courage in her chest. Days crept forward, each one punctuated by a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The email lingered in the back of her mind, a specter of uncertainty that taunted her at every turn. She kept returning to her notes, drafting proposals and potential budgets. The act of planning felt satisfying, as if the very act of writing wove together the fabric of her aspirations. Yet, each time she entered the hospital, the weight of other people's expectations bore down on her. Would her colleagues see her the same way? Would they still view her as a dedicated nurse? Or would they see her ambition as a distraction? This internal conflict gnawed at her, blurring the lines between ambition and obligation. As she rounded a corner toward the supply room one busy afternoon, she overheard two nurses discussing her project. "I don't get it," said Sarah's co-worker, Jenna. "Why does she need to take on more work? Isn't being a nurse enough?" The dismissal cut deep, igniting a response within Sarah. She found herself torn. Should she confront the gossip politely, defend her commitment, or let it go and use their skepticism as fuel? The fear of confrontation crept in as she weighed the consequences of either choice. Later that evening, lying in bed, she replayed the conversation in her mind, dissecting each word. Jenna's simple question lingered, a painful twist to her gut. Was nursing not enough? In stripping her ambition down to an obligation, perhaps it was Jenna's own limitations reflected back at her. The realization stung, but it also invigorated Sarah's resolve. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a gardener in the making, creating nourishment for both body and soul. The next morning, walking into the hospital, she felt an unexpected shift in her demeanor. Where there had been doubt, clarity began to crystallize. This was no longer a battle fought in isolation. It was an evolution, the very essence of who she was, growing beyond the walls of the hospital. With every step, she recommitted to the vision, no longer allowing shadows to dictate her ambition. As she leaned into her personal and professional strengths, she glanced at the other staff members, willing to share her evolving plans. What would they think? Would her passion resonate or create friction? This moment was pivotal. She was stepping onto a precipice, ready to share the full scope of her heart's work, exposing herself in a way that could either inspire unity or sow division. With the edges of her resolve sharpening into focus, Sarah found herself questioning whether she was prepared for the visibility her project would demand. Was she ready to let her passion lead her forward, risking vulnerability in front of those closest to her? That decision loomed just as large as the garden project itself, and she knew that no matter how the response would come, stepping bravely into that arena would define her path forward. The time had come to confront both her colleagues and her doubts, head-on. Would their reactions bring her validation or condemnation? Would she be embraced as an innovative mind eager to change lives? Or would they shun her for stepping beyond the bounds of their established norms? The moment of truth was fast approaching, igniting a new uncertainty that trembled in her heart. As Sarah navigated the busy corridors of the hospital, she could feel the dual weight of her ambitions and her colleagues' perceptions pressing down on her. Every familiar face seemed a potential ally or adversary, amplifying her internal debate. Walking past the nurses' station, she caught sight of Jenna laughing with a few co-workers. The laughter felt infectious, yet it stung her pride. Those same voices had questioned her, casting doubt on the passion she held close to her heart. Was she really prepared to confront Jenna? The thought ignited conflicting emotions: anger, determination, and the gnawing awareness of vulnerability. But she couldn't back down. She paused, her breath hitching momentarily as she contemplated the path ahead. How would she share her vision with her colleagues without risking their scorn? The key, she realized, lay in honesty. Later that morning, as the buzz of lunchtime descended upon the break room, the opportunity arrived. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself against the swirling uncertainties. She resolved to seek out a dialogue, not a debate. Instead of channeling her anxiety into a confrontation, she would focus on inviting understanding. A bridge rather than a wall. "Hey, Jenna, can we talk for a minute?" she asked, surprising herself with how steady her voice was. Her heart raced as she gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. "What's up?" Jenna asked, tilting her head slightly, the playful tone from earlier fading into something more neutral. "I've been meaning to share more about my project," Sarah started, feelings of pride welling up mixed with trepidation. "It's not just a workload for me. It's something I think could benefit our patients in a lasting way." Jenna's expression shifted, a flicker of curiosity lighting her features. "I don't get how it could help. Isn't being a nurse enough work already?" Sarah pushed the panic down and replied, "I hear you, but I've always believed that health extends beyond the hospital. Through this project, I want to empower people to take charge of their long-term wellness." She paused, feeling the vulnerability swell, but continued. "It's rooted in my experiences with patients who want to make changes but don't know where to start. I see potential in a chance to create a ripple effect in our community." The hesitation in Jenna's expression transformed. It was as if Sarah's words had peeled away layers of skepticism, exposing the underlying human concerns that motivated them both. A desire to help, even if their approaches differed. "I guess I hadn't thought about it that way," Jenna admitted, her tone softening. "I sometimes feel stretched thin, just like you. Maybe I've been too quick to judge." In that moment, Sarah felt a small tremor of triumph. It was an acknowledgement, small but significant. But there was more to confront. The deeper challenge was yet to come. "Thank you for hearing me out, Jenna," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "But this project needs support to take off. I can't do it alone, and I'd love to collaborate. I want to hear what you think could work, or even how we can make it beneficial for all of us." Jenna's brow furrowed, contemplating. You really think we could all benefit? Sarah met her gaze with a mix of hope and confidence. I do, but I need your voice, and others, to make that happen. With new resilience driving her, Sarah felt a shift in her internal narrative. This was the beginning, a chance to transform the skepticism around her ambitions into collaborative support. But as her resolve solidified around this project, doubts about her colleagues' broader acceptance loomed larger. The hospital's environment felt increasingly charged. The stakes were higher than ever. Would others rally alongside her? Could she really unearth common ground among a workforce trained to operate within defined structures? With determination surging through her veins, she knew that the next steps would reveal much more than the tangible outcomes of her project. They would carve paths through her relationships, challenging her to lead with conviction and authenticity, even as fear tried to tether her back to safety. As Sarah prepared for the next meeting with the hospital administration, she found herself asking a new question. Was she truly ready for the vulnerabilities that leadership demanded? The answers beckoned, an invitation to embrace a role she had yet to fully understand. The days leading up to the meeting with hospital administration felt like an eternity to Sarah. Each tick of the clock echoed in her mind as she meticulously reworked her presentation. The small conference room where she would be presenting suddenly loomed large in her thoughts. The faces of seasoned administrators, skeptics of any new initiative, flashed before her. They were experienced, rigid in their ways, and often uninterested in the views of fresh ideas brought forth by newcomers like her. Yet the conversation with Jenna sparked a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, there were others like Jenna, cautiously curious, yet uncertain. As she rehearsed her presentation in the quiet of her apartment, she wielded notes like armor against her insecurities. However, the fear of inadequacy gnawed at her. Could she communicate her vision compellingly enough to sway seasoned professionals? What if all her vulnerable honesty only led to dismissal or ridicule? Each scenario spiraled through her mind, taunting her determination. Then she recalled Jenna's reaction. The shift from skepticism to intrigue. It proved she could spark connection through vulnerability. That memory solidified her resolve. If she could be honest with Jenna and invite her into collaboration, surely she could communicate the same with the administrators. On the day of the meeting, Sarah dressed with purpose, wearing a blazer that made her feel powerful and confident. She paced in her small office, taking deep breaths to steady her racing heart. Her palms were clammy, but she pushed the physical sensations aside, anchoring her thoughts to her mission. She was prepared to assert not just her project, but also her place within the hospital's narrative. As the meeting commenced, Sarah eloquently shared the core of her project, redefining wellness as an ongoing lifestyle, rather than a singular event promoted within the confines of the hospital. She spoke passionately, weaving her own experiences and patient stories into the fabric of her presentation. She saw nods and murmurs of agreement among a few attendees, but she also noticed the skeptical gazes of others. Just then, she caught eye contact with Dr. Henderson, a seasoned administrator known for his brusque demeanor. His expression was unreadable, but she felt the intensity of his scrutiny. The moment stretched painfully long, threatening to unearth all her self-doubt. Instead of faltering, she leaned into that internal discomfort and forged ahead. Health, she reiterated, is a spectrum, and we're in a unique position to guide our patients. But to do that, we must collaborate, share knowledge, and develop a community approach that fosters well-being beyond these walls. Without thinking, she invited questions, an acknowledgement of potential contention. I know this idea can feel daunting. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts or criticisms, because refining this project isn't just about me. It's about all of us, and the patients we serve. A thick silence followed her invitation, and time slowed. Sarah's heart thudded audibly in her ears. Then, unexpectedly, Dr. Henderson raised his hand, a gesture that felt disarming, yet empowering. He asked a question about logistics, digging into the mechanics of her proposal. To her surprise, the question did not feel like an assault on her ideas, but rather an opportunity to clarify and enhance her vision. As she responded, she realized she was no longer merely defending her project. She was engaging in a collaborative exploration. The tension in her shoulders started to melt away. Addressing concerns began to feel exhilarating, rather than threatening. This moment of vulnerability had transformed into a powerful dialogue. As the meeting progressed, she could see glimmers of interest in several faces. Even Dr. Henderson seemed to engage more deeply, occasionally jotting down notes. Sarah felt a burgeoning sense of hope swell in her chest, tethered to the recognition that this could indeed lead to collaboration. But just as momentum built, another voice cut through the emerging camaraderie. A senior administrator, notorious for his unfounded skepticism, challenged the practicality and necessity of her project. "We've had countless ideas before. What makes this one worth our investment?" Sarah felt her heart drop. The stakes had risen dramatically. As doubt threatened to rear its head again, she straightened her posture and approached this new hurdle with a calm professionalism she hadn't known she could muster. Her response was both strategic and authentic. "This project isn't just another idea. It's a refinement of what we already know. We have the passion within this hospital to connect with patients beyond their immediate need for care. What I ask today is a chance to explore how we can foster long-term wellness together. Isn't that worth our investment?" As the room buzzed with murmurs of engagement, Sarah recognized the shifting dynamics. She had neither won every battle, nor swayed all hearts, but her voice had been heard. This moment revealed the tangible truth of leadership. Struggles would be constant, yet vulnerability didn't have to limit her. It could illuminate pathways she had yet to comprehend. As she walked out of that meeting room, challenges still lingering in her mind, Sarah felt an electric thrill coursing through her. She had changed through this experience, abraded some edges, and deepened her connections to her colleagues. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one question began to echo louder than the rest. What would it take for her to fully embrace the unknown territory of leadership? As Sarah prepared herself for whatever awaited, she realized she stood at the precipice of a crucial decision, one that could either solidify her path or shatter her ambitions completely. The days following the meeting turned into a whirlwind of emotions for Sarah. She found herself meticulously analyzing every response from the administrators, replaying conversations over and over in her mind. Their varying reactions became a mental tapestry she struggled to decipher. The satisfaction of being heard clashed with the anxiety of unresolved skepticism, leaving her feeling adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Trying to shake off the lingering doubts, Sarah sought refuge in her routine. Each morning she jogged through the park near her apartment, breathing in cool air filled with the scent of freshly bloomed flowers, attempting to reclaim her focus. However, each run seemed shadowed by flashes of the meeting, the gaze of Dr. Henderson's scrutiny, and the chilling words of the skeptical administrator. Could she really make an impact, or was she destined to be another fleeting idea? One afternoon, as Sarah sat nursing a cup of coffee in her office, she received a surprising email. Jenna had sent a follow-up message, expressing her interest in collaborating further on Sarah's project. Jenna's words radiated hope, spilling energy into the depths of Sarah's uncertainty. The email was punctuated with suggestions for refining ideas and addressing logistics, all from a fresh perspective. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude, resonating with the resounding possibility of partnership. Inspired, Sarah reached out to Jenna the very next day. They scheduled a brainstorming session, and as they sat together, the atmosphere felt electric. With every idea exchanged, Sarah discovered a newfound ability to collaborate without fear. Jenna's enthusiasm mirrored her own, and the two fed off each other's creativity, transforming initial hesitations into a blueprint for the project's next phase. Yet, it wasn't the brainstorming itself that mesmerized Sarah. It was the way Jenna's beliefs aligned with her own. Sarah realized that she didn't have to carry the burdens of this initiative alone. This partnership was the missing piece to her puzzle, one that could present a more comprehensive plan that addressed both the practicality and vision behind her proposal. As their discussion deepened, Sarah began to see the project blossom in ways she hadn't anticipated. Together, they crafted strategies that included input from patients and their families, ensuring that the approach would resonate on a personal level. Sarah's mind whirled with ideas, and she felt invigorated by the shared responsibility. It was not only a chance for professional growth, but also a moment to redefine her own place within the institution. The following weeks passed in a blur of meetings, late-night planning sessions, and heartfelt discussions about why their work mattered. Along the way, as her confidence grew, snippets of a leadership identity began to crystallize within her. She started speaking up in staff meetings, sharing insights with her colleagues, and even challenging outdated practices. The very kind of commitment that once intimidated her. However, the real test of her newfound voice came when she received an invitation to present again, this time alongside Jenna, to a larger committee within the hospital. A rare opportunity to amplify their vision. The gravity of the invitation sent waves of doubt crashing down on her. Would they be prepared to face a wider audience of skeptics again? Despite her progress, Sarah grappled with the impulse to retreat into the safety of her previous self. As she crafted their presentation, the familiar anxiety crept in, but she anchored herself to the experiences shared over coffee, to the spark she felt in her collaboration with Jenna, and to every supportive glance from attentive colleagues during their brainstorming sessions. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. She wasn't merely presenting an idea. She was articulating a vision for the future of care in their institution, one that promised to change lives. Standing at the precipice once more, Sarah knew she had to persist. The time had come to confront her fears, to embrace the magnitude of her role as a leader in transforming wellness culture within the hospital. Would she choose to step forward and assert herself one final time? As Sarah prepared for the upcoming presentation, the question loomed larger than ever. Could she rise to the occasion and transform her once fragile aspirations into a powerful movement for change? Or would she falter under the pressure of the broader audience? The moment of truth was fast approaching. As Sarah stood at the threshold of the conference room, her heart raced with a blend of anticipation and trepidation. The weight of her aspirations and the responsibility that accompanied them swept over her like a gust of wind. With Jenna by her side, she took a deep breath, willing herself to embrace the daunting task ahead. This was no longer merely about a community garden. It was an opportunity to redefine her professional identity, proving that she was capable of more than just nursing tasks. The space was filled with the chatter of committee members, all seasoned veterans in healthcare. Some glanced over, eyeing the two women with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Sarah felt that familiar pang of doubt pull at her, begging her to retreat. But she refused to give in to that voice. Instead, she focused on the fact that she was no longer alone. As they began, Jenna's voice steadied Sarah's wavering resolve. Together, they delivered a succinct overview of their community garden project, articulating not just the logistics, but the profound impact it could herald for patients. With each slide they presented, Sarah felt herself transform into a beacon of purpose. The words flowed seamlessly. She spoke of wellness through community engagement, bringing fresh produce to local families, and the emotional healing that came from nurturing both plants and relationships. When a committee member voiced concerns about the feasibility of such a project, Sarah felt the familiar anxiety surge through her. But this time, instead of shrinking back, she felt the weight of her preparation bolster her confidence. This is not simply a project, but a necessary evolution in healthcare," she replied. "We are presented with an opportunity to bridge the gap between the hospital and the community, fostering long-term wellness that extends far beyond the treatment of illness. The potential return on investment in terms of healthier lifestyles and reduced hospital readmissions screams for our attention." There it was, the infusion of passion and purpose propelling her words forward. She had transformed hesitant rhetoric into a declaration of possibilities. The energy in the room shifted. Heads nodded in agreement, eyes lit with interest. With each back and forth, Sarah exchanged ideas that built upon the foundation of her dream, fortifying her resolve to embrace both leadership and vulnerability. As the final questions faded and they wrapped up the presentation, a palpable sense of accomplishment filled the air. The committee deliberated briefly and announced that they would invest initial funding and resources into the project, stating it was a commitment to the community's well-being and a chance to enrich their healthcare practices. As Sarah walked out of that room, a rush of fulfillment cascaded through her. She felt recognized not just as a nurse, but as an innovator, an individual capable of confronting challenges head-on and advocating for transformation. It was more than just validation. It was a cementing of her new identity, intertwined with purpose. In the weeks that followed, the garden took shape, evolving from a mere dream to a flourishing initiative. Sarah balanced her duties at the hospital while pouring energy into the garden. The community rallied around them, volunteers eagerly joining to break ground and plant seeds. She witnessed tangible growth, not just in the garden's blossoms, but in herself. The proud glances from her children as they joined her on sunny weekends equipped Sarah with newfound confidence. They were engaged in her journey, witnessing their mother step into her role as a leader in both their home and the community. Contrasting her previous life, a fraught struggle between obligations and fleeting dreams, now painted a picture of empowerment and purpose. Each day, as laughter echoed around the garden, Sarah knew she had embraced her authentic trajectory. She was achieving her goals, transforming adversities into triumphs, and cultivating not just plants, but the very roots of her identity. The garden became a sanctuary, nourished by love and resilience, a reflection of her transformation. No longer haunted by doubts, Sarah stood tall as a woman who had achieved what she once thought was unattainable. She had ignited a spark that would ignite hope in others. And as she gazed upon the vibrant blooms around her, every petal whispered the truth. She had conquered her storms, and in doing so, had not only nurtured a community, but herself. Now is your moment to support this journey of personal growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel. You need to be part of our community and never miss exclusive emotional stories again. Leave a like right now to help feed the algorithm. It's crucial for us to reach more who need inspiration. Comment below your thoughts and reactions. Share your theories on how you think Sarah's journey unfolds. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support and be part of something bigger.